A ceasefire in Gaza is expected to begin shortly in the next few hours once Israel's cabinet has formally approved the ceasefire agreement. The deal to secure the return of all the remaining hostages and to bring about an end to the war with Hamas was agreed by negotiators in Egypt last night. Tonight, Hamas has said it had received guarantees from the United States and mediators that the conflict is permanently over. In Tel Aviv, people have been gathering since first thing this morning to celebrate after President Trump announced a deal was close, which meant the hostages would soon be released. Jubilation in Gaza too, where tens of thousands of people have been killed over the past 2 years. As part of the deal, 2,000 Palestinian prisoners will be freed and truckloads of aid will be allowed in. These are the 48 hostages remaining in Gaza, though only 20 of them are thought to be alive. President Trump says they will be freed on Monday and Tuesday. Israel does not allow international news organisations into Gaza, but the BBC works with freelancers who live there. Here is our first report tonight from our international editor, Jeremy Bowen.
It was the middle of the night when the news came in that the families of the hostages, their supporters, and all Israelis had waited 2 years to hear. The deal was done. This is the square in Tel Aviv that is the center of the families' campaign for a hostage deal. 20 hostages are believed to be alive. The bodies of another 28 are also due to come home.
We want peace, we want the hostages back, we want to stop the war, we want really just give us a rest, we want to live.
Celebrations started inside the Gaza Strip at the same time. Palestinians, desperate for a ceasefire and an end to Israeli attacks, destruction and now starvation, poured into the streets. By first light in the ruins of Gaza City, emergency workers were thanking God. Israel does not allow the BBC and other news organizations to go into the Gaza Strip to report freely. Amal sent us this clip from her tent in southern Gaza.
I can't believe I'm finally saying this. The war is over. After 2 years of hunger, destruction, and endless loss, Gaza is finally quiet. I've been dreaming of this moment. To tell my boys that خلصت الحرب يا ماما. You are safe now.
Amal said she's happy, but her heart is broken. Her brother is among more than 67,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians, killed by Israel. In Washington, rumors of a deal firmed up when Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, interrupted a televised meeting with a message for President Trump. The note said he needed to make the announcement.
I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
Soon after, the president left the room to post the news on social media. Hamas released a statement thanking Qatar, Egypt and Turkey, and "We value the efforts of U.S. President Donald Trump." It took 3 days of talks in Egypt, where the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, led the American team in a hotel at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the Hamas delegation stayed on a different floor to the Israelis. Mediators from Qatar and Egypt shuttled between the two sides. Pressure told from the U.S. and Arab and other Muslim countries.
We have hit a critical point in this war. From day one of this war, the Prime Minister laid out 3 objectives: the return of all of our hostages, the defeat and dismantling of Hamas, and ensuring Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. All of the Prime Minister's objectives have now been achieved.
Israelis are still traumatized by the 7th of October attacks, and in the 2 years since then, deeply divided between supporters of the Prime Minister and those who blame him for security blunders that allowed Hamas to kill around 1,200 people, mostly Israeli civilians, as well as foreign workers and IDF soldiers, and take 251 hostages. Nimrod Cohen, who's 21, captured when the rest of his tank crew were killed, is one of the Israeli hostages coming home. Nimrod's father, Yehuda, of course, is delighted, but worried what the ordeal has done to his son, and he blames Israel's prime minister for not doing a deal much sooner. I know you're not happy with Benjamin Netanyahu's performance. He says he's prioritized the hostages.
He's a liar. He's lying before he opens his mouth. And I'm saying it as one who looked him in the eyes, face to face.
Why is he lying?
Netanyahu has only one purpose: to stay in politics, to be a prime minister, to be the one that tells everybody what to do. And recently, well, the last few years, to escape his criminal offenses, criminal trial.
This is Doha, capital of Qatar. Donald Trump, the real estate president, has visions of one day making Gaza look like this. But it was an attack on this city on the 9th of September that led to the agreement. Israel tried and failed to kill the Hamas leadership by firing 10 missiles at this building where they were debating the latest American proposals. It looked as if the deal was gone, but the president and his advisors decided the only chance was to put pressure on Israel as well as Hamas to come to the negotiating table and stay there. In Washington this afternoon, with reason, President Trump was in a triumphant mood.
As you know, last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace.
Tonight, this was the sky over Gaza. A ceasefire cannot come soon enough. The war isn't over. Many big issues, including Gaza's future governance and security, are not resolved. Getting them right will be a major challenge. But this is the best chance of ending the war since it started. Now, Hamas have put out a statement about the big attack in Gaza City today on a family home, it says. 70, as they put it, defenseless innocent civilians. Most of them are still under the rubble. They're saying, Hamas, that the government of Netanyahu is trying to confuse the situation, disrupt the efforts of the mediators, and to keep going, Hamas says, with the genocide until the last moment. It's a sign that the difficult negotiations that lie ahead will come with no mutual goodwill whatever.
Jeremy Bone, thank you. Well, the people of Gaza have paid a heavy price since Hamas launched its attacks on Israel in 2023. More than 67,000 people have been killed in the past 2 years, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. At least 20,000 of the dead are thought to be children. So much of Gaza has been destroyed. This is what it looked like in July 2023, before Hamas launched its attacks. And this is what it looks like now. So many homes completely devastated. Our Middle East correspondent, Lucy Williamson, reports.
Under the shadow of the past 2 years, amid the rubble of their homes, Gazans celebrated today. Emotions buried since this war began, re-emerging in hearts and faces.
This is a victory agreement, a victory for the children, a victory for the resistance, and a victory for every free Palestinian.
It's honestly an incomplete joy because we lost a lot. I don't have a spoon nor a fork in my house. It is just some stones. Others lost their families.
Everyone is happy. The cycle of displacement and extermination has come to an end. We're looking forward to a better future.
For some, this deal will sharpen the grief over what has been lost. For Yasmin and her family, it came 6 weeks too late. Her daughter, Hala, died in August from malnutrition. She was 4 years old.
Since yesterday, since early morning, I've been crying. Today marks the 40th day since her death. It could have been a day of celebration, a huge joy, with her in my arms.
Across the border in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, a stunned relief, cloaked in joy. For 2 years, they've demanded their leader make a deal to free the hostages held by Hamas. But it's not Benjamin Netanyahu who's seen as the hero here today. It's Donald Trump.
I feel like tears and the big emotion.
What would you say to Donald Trump today?
I want to thank him very, very much, and I appreciate it that he put his all pressure to end that war.
Above the celebrations here, there are American flags, signs thanking Donald Trump. The sense here is that the American president has delivered on his promise to free the hostages. Now Hamas is counting on him to ensure that Israel doesn't simply resume the offensive once the hostages are home.
But hopes have been raised here before. One of the bodies still held by Hamas is Udi Goren's cousin, Tal.
I will believe it when I see 48 people going into white ambulances, some of them walking on their feet, some of them in body bags, making their ways back to Israel. I'll believe it then.
My father,
Rotem Cooper's father, Amiram, died in Hamas captivity last year.
We're going to be lucky if we get him, and we're going to get him in a bag. So it brings a lot of, emotions of anger, of why didn't we brought about such a deal much earlier.
In return for the hostages, Israel's expected to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli jails, including, perhaps, the man who murdered Jonathan's uncle 30 years ago.
So it's a bag of emotions. Obviously, I'm happy to see our countrymen come back home. Releasing terrorists with blood on their hands, high-ranking terrorists, is giving them another scene war. It's kicking the can down the road another 10 years. And my family wants this hostage exchange to happen, but we know that they believe that the current price is too high to pay.
Even if this conflict is ending, it will haunt Gaza for years. Leaders will ask who won this war. Their people will gauge what's been lost. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Tel Aviv.
Well, the deal being approved tonight is the first phase of President Trump's 20-point peace plan for Gaza. Once all the hostages have been returned, Israel will release thousands of Palestinian prisoners. Israel will pull its troops back, though they'll remain in Gaza. This is where the IDF have been during the conflict, and this, the yellow line, is where the ceasefire deal says they will pull back to. Up to 600 aid trucks a day will be allowed to re-enter the territory. And a board of peace headed by Donald Trump will be responsible for day-to-day public services. Well, President Trump says his deal will bring everlasting peace. If it all holds, it will certainly be a major diplomatic and personal victory for him, as our North America editor Sarah Smith reports, and a warning her piece includes offensive language.
So this is a big, big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization.
That was last week, as he made a reluctant Mr. Netanyahu agree to his 20-point peace plan. Donald Trump likes to say he is the best friend Israel's ever had in the White House. He's also forced more reluctant concessions from the Israeli Prime Minister than many previous presidents have managed. The whole process has been much tougher than he expected when he demanded the hostages be returned by the 20th of January this year.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
Over months of talks, Mr. Trump was often frustrated with what he saw as Netanyahu's negativity and intransigence. He was furious when Israel bombed Iran in June, just after America had agreed a ceasefire between the two countries.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Israel's bombing strike on the Hamas negotiating team inside Qatar, one of America's closest allies, was the final straw.
I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Last week, Mr. Netanyahu was forced to call the Qatari leader to personally apologise. The White House released these pictures to show just who's taken charge in this relationship. Posting this AI-generated image today on social media, Benjamin Netanyahu is clearly adopting a different tack: flattery, which often does work with Donald Trump. So the Israeli leader is declaring he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. This year's winner will be announced by the Nobel Committee tomorrow. Donald Trump is often criticised for behaving like a bully on the world stage, but that is exactly what allowed him to get this deal done, how he was able to railroad Benjamin Netanyahu into signing up to a deal that other American presidents could not and probably would not have been able to get him to agree to. And it's that tough, aggressive, bullying demeanour that just might allow Donald Trump to guarantee that Israel will not renew its attack on Gaza as soon as the hostages have been released, as well as his good relations with Arab Gulf states that helped persuade Hamas to sign up to this deal, which is a remarkable diplomatic achievement for him. He's planning to travel to the Middle East early next week, probably to visit Jerusalem and to attend a signing ceremony in Egypt to put his signature on this agreement.
Sarah Smith, thank you. Well, President Trump may well be in the Middle East when the hostages are released early next week, he says. The remains of the dead hostages will be returned too. But he warned that some of the hostages' bodies will be hard to find. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning reports.
Just months ago, British-Israeli Emily Damari was a hostage. Now she's celebrating with the family of twins Gali and Ziv Berman, both set to be released. Ziv was trying to protect her when they were both kidnapped.
Everything they did together, even got kidnapped together. This is the longest that they've been separated. We know from released hostages that they were separated in the first or second days under Shifa hospital in Gaza.
48 hostages are due to be handed over, with about 20 thought to be alive, including childhood friends Eviatar David and Guy Gilboa Dalal. Hamas released videos of their emaciated state, one being made to dig his own grave in the tunnels. Avinatan Or, whose British-Israeli mother says she just wants to hear his heartbeat again. He was kidnapped with his girlfriend, Noah Argamani. And Alon Ohel, a pianist, Hamas releasing a captivity video showing what his family say is the lost sight in one eye. There have been concerns about the fate of Nepalese student Bipin Joshi, whose family yesterday released a video Hamas took of him in captivity. The bodies of those killed on October the 7th or as hostages include 85-year-olds Amiram Cooper and Aryeh Zalmanovich, whose son said he was murdered in a Gaza hospital. One woman, 27-year-old Inbar Heyman, a graffiti artist taken from the Nova Festival. Mohammed El Atrash, a Bedouin father of 13. Joshua Molel, an agricultural student from Tanzania. And Yossi Sharabi, whose British family fought to bring his body home.
First and foremost, it's to be able to give him the dignified burial that he's thus far been denied. The absence of a grave to go and cry on is something that increases the torture and the trauma. It seems that some of the bodies are possibly missing or can't be located. Now, it's difficult to know whether that's a genuine logistical problem or whether this is a final part of Hamas's psychological torture to increase the trauma on us.
Bring them home has been the cry for more than 2 years. Finally, they will be. The living and the dead. Some to their families, others to funerals. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Well, news of an imminent ceasefire has been welcomed right around the world. Sir Keir Starmer said the first phase of a Gaza plan would not have happened without President Trump's leadership.
I want to strongly welcome the news that a deal has been reached on the first stage of President Trump's peace plan for Gaza. This will come as a profound relief for the hostages and their families and the civilian population in Gaza, and for the whole world.
The Prime Minister speaking earlier today. Well, our political editor Chris Mason is with me. So events taking place right now in the Middle East tonight that will have repercussions not just here but right around the world.
Indeed so, and discussions involving lots of countries about how so many of the unanswered questions tonight may be answered in the days and weeks ahead. So we've seen the Foreign Secretary today, Yvette Cooper, in Paris for a meeting of foreign ministers from Europe, so from France, Germany and Spain, and also representatives from the Middle East, so from Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Jordan, exploring, as I say, all of those questions about what happens next. Intriguingly, some on the British side are drawing some parallels between the President Trump peace plan and the Good Friday peace agreement in Northern Ireland. Now, let's see how durable those parallels may prove to be. But there's some intriguing overlaps of personnel. So not least Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, given that he's due to have this role on the Board of Peace, as President Trump has described it. And also Jonathan Powell. He's the National Security Advisor in the current government. But back then, a quarter of a century ago, was Chief of Staff to Tony Blair and was a key negotiator around the Good Friday Agreement. Mr. Powell was in Egypt just the other day as part of the negotiations leading up to where we are. And then a final thought, for a conflict that's happened a long way from here, there's been an outsized influence, I think, on the conversation, the national conversation here. Yes, for two faith groups, Jews and Muslims, but for plenty of others as well. We've had the protests, haven't we? Those elected to Parliament off the back of arguments about the conflict. And then just last week, all of the conversations that followed those horrific events in Manchester. So you wonder, if this works through, do we see a decline in salience of some of those issues in our own domestic conversation?
Chris Mason, thank you. Let's get a last word now from our international editor, Jeremy Bone, in Jerusalem. And clearly an extraordinary moment today. We are expecting a ceasefire imminently. The big question, though, is whether it's going to last.
I think the ceasefire is certainly going to last. The big question is about the negotiations that follow it to finalise the agreement, to flesh out all of the detail and to make the 20-point plan into, as Trump says, the end of the war. Now, his envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner have arrived in Jerusalem and they have met Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister. So that process is continuing, and you've got, of course, those Israelis gathering in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. But big contrasts because of the what appears to be a very large airstrike with many killed and wounded in Gaza. Sophie, this is the best chance so far to end the war. There is no doubt about that. But looking ahead a bit, as and when the war ends, and it will end eventually, the fact is the conflict has been changed by it massively. This conflict that goes back more than a century. What's happened in the last 2 years is as significant, I would say, in the conflicts and the way it is, as 1948, when Israel became independent, what Palestinians call the catastrophe, 67, when they captured the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, creating the shape of the current conflict. I think the events of 2 years ago and everything that has happened since is as significant. And what it's also done has changed a lot of attitudes outside this place, across the world, to both Palestinians and Israelis.